Reporter Erin Bates is following that inquiry for us. And Erin, just very quickly, first let's start with Mzwanele Manyi. He's been on the stand around Phumza Williams before. He's back now for the second round, so to speak.
Yes, and this time things will be a lot different in terms of how they play out. Last time he really gave his response to two aspects of Phumza Williams' testimony. This time he will face some questioning, and he will be led in evidence, it seems, by members of the legal team here at the inquiry into allegations of state capture. Let's just have a recap on some of what Phumza Williams said in her testimony about money.
I got a text message from Mr. Manyi, who is saying that I must say that the TNA breakfast didn't happen in his time, and it is my view that I think she's trying to influence my submission.
Now, Dan, the last time Manyi spoke at the Commission of Inquiry, he was careful to say that he meant no harm by sending that message to Phumza Williams, and that he was simply trying to correct an error in fact as it was being issued by her under oath at the testimony. And in fact, he said they had a very collegial relationship, so he was quite surprised at her response to it and her interpretation of his text message. Today, we're likely to move on to things like government funding for advertising to the New Age newspaper, as well as the ANN breakfast, or the New Age breakfast, I should say, and also questions around his role in providing advisory services during the investigation into the breakdown in the relationship between the Gupta-linked business accounts and their banks.
And finally, we understand that the National Treasury side might be wrapped up today in terms of Phumza Macanda, Chief Director of Communications at National Treasury. We, of course, have heard from the DG, current DG Mzwanele, and we heard from the former one, Phumza.
Yes, and both Mzwanele and Phumza gave us real insight into crunch time around the dismissal of Ntlantla and the appointment of Des van Rooyen, particularly, Dan, around communications. And that's likely why we're going to hear from Macanda today in terms of what was coming from either the presidency and Treasury around the time of Van Rooyen's arrival, because there was so much anxiety around the stability and surety of South Africa as a long-term investment. And we've heard from the likes of Phumza on what the concerns were around South Africa as a safe bet long-term and the issue of long-term government bonds, and that he was anxious that the National Treasury provide communication to local and international investors to try and calm the anxiety and the worry over South Africa's economy around the time of Van Rooyen's appointment.
Thank you very much. Erin Bates, our reporter there, following that state capture inquiry, which of course today will resume with Phumza Macanda from National Treasury in charge of communications, and of course Mzwanele Manyi will be back.